Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Unmasking Autism with AFO. As always, I'm your host, Carley Marissa, and I have another wonderful guest today who is also a female. And as you know, the female autistic experience is still very underrepresented, very underdiscussed. So anytime I get the chance to talk to another woman with autism, I'm taking it. So I'm just going to jump right in and let Bailey Hoffner tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into all the questions and everything.
Sounds good. Thank you, Carley. I'm excited to be here. I am Bailey Hoffner. I'm an adult diagnosed autistic person, and I found my pathway to diagnosis through, as many adult diagnosed individuals do, through my child. And also specifically through the lens of PDA autism, or pathological demand avoidance. Some of us prefer persistent drive for autonomy, but we can talk more about the complications in naming and all of that.
Yeah. So like you said, diagnosed as an adult, different from me. I was diagnosed as a child, but you're right. A lot of people diagnosed as adults, stereotypically correct with the females, we go underdiagnosed. But I hear that a lot where, I didn't know I had autism until my kid got diagnosed with autism. So if you want to, can you kind of talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, I'm 38 now. For the first 35 years of my life, I really had no self-awareness about, I thought I did, but about my internal experience. I've since learned to have very low interoception, so it's really hard for me to feel things internally like that other people feel pretty naturally, like when you're hungry, need to go to the bathroom, pain, but I didn't really know anything. That's just one little piece of what I've learned about myself. So my kid was really struggling, and we had thought about autism a few times, but there were certain things that, because of a lot of common misconceptions around autism looking a certain way, we kept kind of saying, well, no, probably not, or I don't know. And so finally things got to kind of a breaking point where he was really struggling, and we weren't supporting him well because we didn't know how. And right around that time, we found out about PDA. So as I mentioned, it's stands for pathological demand avoidance or persistent drive for autonomy. And I like to say both of those namings because neither of them is perfect, but together they kind of encapsulate a little closer what the experience is. So persistent drive for autonomy is very clearly like everything that a PDAer, as we often call ourselves in community, does is rooted in a deep and intrinsic motivation for autonomy that often ends up looking like needed to be completely in control of everything. But a lot of people see that and don't realize just the depth and degree to which it affects daily life. Mm-hmm. So with pathological demand avoidance, you then part of when we're looking at that, we see that need for control or a sense of control and autonomy translates all the way through to avoiding the demands of everyday life that we even want to do. So I already talked, let's just get it out there. I already talked about bathroom stuff, right? Like if your body is telling you you need to go to the bathroom, oftentimes a PDAer has a threat response activation to the sense of that demand and can't go to the bathroom. So there are attendant health complications, obviously, that come along with that sort of thing. So as we started to learn all of these things about my child, almost immediately, my partner and I, noticing that they were all things that I did, or those attendant health complications or comorbidities were things that I had. And So yeah, one of the most striking moments I remember was we had just started learning that we could reduce demands for our kid and in turn reduce anxiety by using more nonverbal communication. So like, just gently pointing towards something, these kinds of things, rather than saying, put on your shoes, which is a very direct demand that a PDA-er, regardless of tone, interprets as a threat. Their nervous system just goes whoop, through the roof. So instead, just sort of like gently guiding is one of many possible techniques. And so we were just learning that. And I was driving in the car with my partner. And I'm just going to say I have my eyes closed. Mm-hmm. I often close my eyes these days when I'm talking because it allows me to maintain access to that flow of language and not forget where I am, because I've reduced the sensory input for myself. So I'll talk a lot with my eyes closed.
You are good.
Yeah, that's one of my many self-accommodations. So yeah, we were driving. We had just started learning about all these things and already seen right away our kid positively responding to some of the changes we were making. And we were, I was driving and talking at the same time. And I drive really well when I'm on my own, and I drive safely when I'm with others. But I regularly turn the wrong way or miss a turn because I'm just like, it's too much to try to manage. So I was driving and talking, and all of a sudden I saw my partner's hand go like this to just kind of indicate it's time to turn. And so I did without even thinking about it. And then I remember like gasping in the car and thinking and saying, do you do that all the time? And he said, well, yeah, I figured out a long time ago that like if I try to say anything to you, you'll bite my head off. I would get really mad because I would go straight to threat activation and feel like I had to fight against his wanting to tell me which way to turn. So that was just an early example.
Yeah, so let's because I don't know everything. I have heard about PDA. I've seen it online. Don't think I have it, but I'm. Can you help me understand it a little bit more? Because when you hear pathological demand avoidance, it sounds like exactly what you're saying. Oh, if you try to tell somebody anything, they're gonna, get upset. Right. But it's really not that. And I'm understanding what you're saying with that. But can you maybe break it down a little bit more for me and anyone else?
Yes.
Just me.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the language that I think is more useful is nervous system based language, because it takes away all of the kind of judgment that often comes in when we start putting diagnoses and pathologizing things. Instead, if we're just talking about our nervous systems, I think it's easier for everyone to understand. Mm-hmm. So for PDAers, we're often described as having what's called hypersensitive neuroception. So neuroception is like your nervous system's perception of safety or threat, is my understanding. And PDAers tend to have a really hypersensitive neuroception. So an example would be if I walk into a room of people, the energy, if it feels off because somebody's upset about something, I know instantly, but I'm not great. I, again, only learned this relatively recently. I'm not great at figuring out the why and understanding what's going on or why things are upset, but I can tell right away, I can feel it. Yeah. And that feeling then activates my threat response. I can tell something's wrong, something's inauthentic, somebody's hiding something, and so I feel unsafe. And so everybody's nervous system is always seeking safety, right? Everyone wants to feel safe, have access to joy and happiness, and nobody wants to suffer. Yeah. That's just true across human experience. So if you're someone who your threat response is really, really hyperactive, then you're going to be kind of fighting more often to get back to that sense of safety. So that's one way I think that it can be helpful to think about PDA. The other thing to know is there's still a lot of discussion going on and studying and learning. PDA itself wasn't sort of discovered and talked about in the literature until like the 90s.
Okay.
And so there's not as much information. It's not technically in the DSM, but my own experience and many of the people that I'm kind of in community with is that we experience it as a subset of autism. So we meet all of the criteria of the DSM, medical diagnoses for autism, sometimes in slightly different ways, but consistently different across the PDA profile. So back to that, like my kid, we would be like, this seems kind of like he might need support related to autism. We had no idea what that would even be because we didn't understand anything. But all we had were sort of societal conceptions about what autism is rather than an understanding of I did have an understanding of the internal experience, but I didn't know that. So PDAers often are what we think of as really high masking. So really, really often, really, really good at masking and seeming pretty perfect. So, and because it's a nervous system based thing, PDAers are also, there's autism, and then there's a very high anxiety component as well.
Yeah, I get that,
Yeah. And so the presentation, just like with autism, when we say you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, right? With PDA, the same is true even within that subset, because everyone's nervous system responses are going to be different. Some people are fighters, right? Some people are fleers. And then there are even more kind of subsets of those. There's freeze as well, of course. Then there's fawning. So fawning is like being absolutely perfect. That was my entire social life until the last couple of years. So I hope that actually
it does actually. And I you bring up fawning, and that's something that I know autistic people, especially females, tend to do, to just try and, you got to get along to go along, or whatever the phrase is. So why don't you talk about that for a second for people in case they might not understand what fawning is?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we mostly know about a lot of people, hopefully if they're listening to your podcast, know something about the idea of masking, right? So you're in a social situation and you have to kind of maybe cover how you actually feel. Maybe it's really loud and you're feeling incredibly stressed, but everybody else seems fine, so you're having to pretend like you're fine. So that's that like conscious act of masking. When I think about fawning, I think of fawning as much more a neurological response. So fawning I think can be, once you're aware of it, you can be aware and can do it. But it's more of, for me and in my experience, it just happened. I just did it because I couldn't. My nervous system knew I wasn't safe. And that was pretty much everywhere. Now, I want to make sure and say I grew up in a loving home. I had wonderful parents, but the fact remained that there wasn't a lens for me to understand myself or my experience that was in any way kind or generous. And so rather than finding ways to understand myself, I really fought against any notion that there was something quote unquote wrong with me or, all of those things. Fawning is like, essentially trying as an attempt to stay safe on a neurological embodied level with whoever you're with, you're going to be perfect. So in the literature, you'll find references to fawning in like domestic abuse kind of stuff, right? Where the person who's being abused is doing everything they can to make sure the abuser knows like that they're happy and everything's good, and because they're so scared. Yeah. It's a way of trying to stay safe. So yeah, fawning is another way, especially if you can't fight or flee. Another way to stay safe is to fawn. And so some of us, women in particular, often develop that as what I think of again as kind of an automatic neurological pathway that just gets repeated and habitual.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for that. Yeah, no, I think fawning probably is something all women, autistic or not, know how to do. But thank you for that. So before we get into all these other questions, so again, I was diagnosed as a child, so I didn't have that moment of, reckoning or what have you that I've heard some other people say. But what was it like for you when you were told, okay, yeah, no, here's what's going on? Like,
yeah, that's a great question. We had gotten my child out of crisis, so it was about a year after radically changing our lives to better support him and seeing the immense benefits. By that time, it was like, okay, it's time to deal with everything that's been building and learning about myself. So I really thought I would go to get, what is that called? When they... assessment. Thank you. I would go for an assessment and they would say, you clearly have ADHD. And then I would have something to bring to my employer to say, here is why I need some accommodations. So that's what I imagined the process was going to be, even though I knew I was autistic at that point. Like I had acknowledged and recognized that on an internal level, but I didn't think there was enough awareness around female presentation and PDA that anyone I would just happen to find in the area would also see that. So it was both incredibly validating and disorienting when right away the first person that did adult assessments that took my insurance came back and said, well, I don't think you have ADHD, but I do think you're autistic. I was like, oh man, I thought I was hiding everything so well. That was, it was incredibly validating and very disorienting. It took about a year of being kind of very angry, not at anyone in particular, just at the world. And I even did a whole like re-teenagering thing. I didn't try to do it. I just like was, I was real mad, kind of angsty mad for a while. And I didn't want to be out in the world. I didn't want to talk to people. I was just angry about what should be better in the world, angry about all the ways in which I and my child weren't supported and aren't supported more broadly in society. So I was really angry even as I was learning more about myself. I would say now, 3 or 4 years down the road, I couldn't be more, just overwhelmed with gratitude that I know this about myself, that I now have ways of saying, hi, I'm Bailey, and I talk with my eyes closed a lot, and not feel weird about it. Like, I don't have to worry about it. And I say this a lot, but I would probably have stayed quiet about my own diagnosis were it not for my kid, because I need the world to be better for him. So I like to get out and talk about it. And that also then relates to my research. I forgot to mention I'm a librarian at Oklahoma State.
We were going to.
We will definitely get to that. Yes.
No, but I thank you for sharing that. I think anger is definitely valid. I also oftentimes, usually in the midst of a social interaction with someone else, get very angry that I have autism. So I think that that's normal.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm doing everything and I still don't understand what is happening.
Yeah.
What's happening?
I know.
And then sometimes other people, they get annoyed and they're like, God, can you just figure it out? And I'm like, I'm trying. No.
You have no idea how hard I'm trying.
Yeah, it's like, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say, a lot of my anger was more externally directed. It was like, I'm mad at the world for not accepting us. I'm mad at the world. But I do also regularly get angry with myself and often just really sad when I'm trying so hard and it still doesn't work. So yeah.
No, but thank you for sharing that. So on that note, what is one thing you wish everyone knew about PDA and autism more broadly?
Yeah. I think I've kind of already said it, because it's that like, I think people imagine autistic individuals, and I'm just going to be completely frank and honest. I think people imagine us as somewhat not human, right? Like a little bit not. And even a lot of the literature is dehumanizing, a lot of the medical literature. And I think that then leads people to imagine that they have no way of understanding the autistic experience. But what I would say is, if you have a PDA in your life or an autistic person in your life, and they experience, sensory sensitivity to, well, for me, it's sound. So I usually have my noise canceling headphones and try to take them wherever, especially if I'm going to be loud or busy places, because I don't have a filter in my ears to turn it all off. So any opportunity that I get to point out to people, that's what it's like, I try to take advantage of it. So for other people, I think if you know something about that experience, even just one little glimpse, whether it's someone you love or someone you know, and you can try to have compassion for what it would be like to be in a social setting, and you're trying so hard to focus and pay attention and say the right things, not mess up. And at the same time, you're hearing literally every noise in the room at the same intensity. Yeah. Just imagine what that would feel like. And then that's your window. It's not that we're like alien or so different, but you just have to find your own kind of sensory and perceptual windows into the experience. And I think that can really lend a lot to understanding and compassion. And I just wish everybody knew on a really deep level that everybody wants to feel safe and happy, and nobody wants to suffer. And so that's true for autistic individuals as well, whether they're literally trying to fight someone or just hanging out, whatever it might be. It's coming from a place of wanting to find safety, even if the way that it comes out doesn't seem that way.
Yeah, no, that's true. People do ask sometimes, like, what's it like? Or like, what's happening in your brain? I see it happening, but like, what's happening? And I kind of liken it to casinos, which I don't like, but we are in Oklahoma. They're everywhere. And I don't like casinos because they're extremely not autism friendly.
Sensory
at all
nightmare.
In any way.
Look, I'm starting to rock.
I do not like casinos. But for a neurotypical person wanting to know, like, what's being overstimulated feel like, I'm like, it's like being at a casino against your will.
Yeah, against your will.
And
exactly.
Like, you can't leave, so you're like trapped. And like all the things happening in a casino happening in your mind.
Right.
But while you need to be like, yeah, everything's good. That's how I try to
That's a great example.
It is.
And the casino covers a lot of sensory sensitivities too. Smell, all the smoke.
Everything. Yeah. Like, it's just, that's what being overstimulated as an autistic person's like. But it can be happening in a very quiet place.
Yes. Since I work remotely, I'm staring at a computer a lot. So I think if you think about, it kind of baffles me that more people don't think about it this way, but we're constantly barraged by lights, all these little tiny lights Like the sensory input we receive these days from screens is like so immensely more than ever in our previous history. This is not me being against screens.
No, yeah.
Let me say that right away. Because my kid still double screens a lot of the time just to get regulated. So, but he watches just like me. The only things that I really usually like watching are like reality competition shows.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think, and that's the same for him, and I think it has to do with predictability. Like there's not going to be, somebody's not going to suddenly jump out and murder someone, or there's not like this, there's a manageable stress of like it's a competition, but it's all very predictable and knowable. Outside of that, I pretty much, I personally, I watch almost nothing, and I would prefer to watch things I've already watched a bazillion times.
Okay.
Yeah, so things that I know and love already. I just want to, like, my partner, whenever we talk about watching a movie, I'm like, well, we could watch Brazil because it's my favorite movie and I could watch it a million times. But that's it. You know, it's like I'm not super open to more stuff because I've just realized when you start, I feel like I've been a study of myself for the last couple of years. I've just been studying because I knew so little. Yeah. And so it's like I'll do a test. Like, I do X, I watch a movie. What does the next 24 to 48 hours look like after that? And consistently, I'm more dysregulated. I have a harder time doing the basic things that I need to support my basic health. And so, so I don't really watch much of anything anymore. Wow. I know. But see, everybody's needs are different. And that gets back to autonomy and supporting and trusting people to know what they need. Yeah, no,
very true. And also just what makes, I think, that statement of if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, so true, because, you know, what's good for you, it might not be good for me. And there's no way it's, you know, we should all be put into the same box, which is very much happening. I'm one of those people, if I can't read it, I can't hear it. You know, I need subtitles. The only time I'm good without subtitles is at the movie theater, because I know they're not going to put them there. But yeah, so on that note, before we move into talking about you being a librarian, for anyone listening that wants to know more about PDA, what are some resources they can begin to look for?
Yes, absolutely. So I would start with Raelene Dundon has a book called PDA in the Therapy Room, I think. And the very first chapter is like, what is PDA? I've read a lot about PDA, and that is still my favorite introduction to PDA, that gives a good broad view of what it can look like. And so I really like that. That comes out of a publisher, Jessica Kingsley, I think, in the UK Publishers. They have they have the most books out there about PDA, and there's so many good ones. So I'll definitely share links. Then here in the States, there's a support group and just resource and consultants called Journeys with PDA. They are my people. I trust them implicitly. It's so powerful to have other parents and other PDAers who I can engage with, and right away they just already get it all, right? Anything about being in community where all of a sudden you don't have to feel like you have to explain everything or mask or act differently. You can just be yourself, and they get it. That has been so powerful. So I could not recommend Journeys with PDA more highly. They do a bi-weekly coffee chat that's virtual. Anybody can go to. So for any parents or people out there just interested, therapists, teachers wanting to know more, that is a fabulous resource and great way to just sort of try to learn a little more. And then I feel like there were others, but I'll make sure to share. Oh yeah, I was gonna say Amanda Diekman is just one of the loveliest people, and she has both a podcast and a book now called Low Demand Parenting. So they're really practical strategies for implementing to actually help. She's awesome. And then Sam Marion Counseling. He's another great, fabulous one. So again, I'll share links.
Do, and then I'll put them in the description for anyone that's interested.
Yes.
But okay, yes. So how has autism affected your career and trajectory as a librarian?
Yeah. It's very interesting. So I, as a PDA-er, a lot like my kid, at school, I was perfect and I had to be perfect and pushed myself to unwellness, over that. So in some ways, it's this, we talk about like different situations and different tasks or whatever, like autistic traits can actually be of benefit. So in some ways it benefited me, obviously, because I did well in school. But it was to the detriment of to the perpetual detriment of my mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So I'm hoping for some balance for my kid. Went to school, I got my master's in library studies, and I thought that I wanted to do something public facing, because again, I had like no self-awareness. I didn't realize how constantly dysregulated I was. So I was living up here. It was just like, go, and then I would crash. Yep. And I didn't know how to access that middle space, which is actually where like you should just live. Yeah. In that like everything's okay.
You should.
So I got my degree in library studies, thought I wanted to do something public facing, and over the years, and I thought I wanted to work in archives and special collections. So super achiever, did that, got a job before I was even done with the program. Things just kept, over the years, I kept leaning more into the technical side of library work and further from the public facing stuff. And with each of those steps back, my well-being seemed to improve. So for me, I enjoy certain kinds of socialization, and I just opt out of pretty much everything else. So how that relates to work is, in the past, I thought I had to do everything and be at all the events and be around all the people all the time. But over time, moving towards the technical side, I landed more in metadata work. So I organize information online to help people find resources.
Okay.
But I don't really interact directly with library patrons often at all. And that works great for me. Okay. Leaning into the technical kind of back of the house stuff has been beneficial for me. I actually did a presentation a couple years ago on the why I think back of the house library work is really well suited for a lot of autistic individuals and people like me. But so now I am a faculty member at Oklahoma State. I'm not tenure track, and the reason for that is my main self-accommodation is that I work completely remotely. Mm-hmm. So if I was going to be tenure track, I would have had to be there in person. Okay. I live in Norman. We would have had to move, and I would have had to be around a bunch of people and their energies that I can't figure out all the time, and it would be really depleting. So I now work completely remotely, and I do my metadata organization work that I love because I love organizing things. And then I also get to do my own research, and that is all focused around autism and libraries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm a firm believer of you learn something new every day. I did not know librarians, there was like a master's for that.
Oh yeah. Actually, to be a librarian, you have to get a master's degree. Oh I mean, I'm sure there are some who don't, but technically, you pretty much have to get your master's in library studies for any of the full librarian positions.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'll go on a tangent.
Yeah. So go look into it if you're autistic.
That's really cool though. I did not know that. So I know you just talked about sort of accommodations, but Are there any like other accommodations for you at work that you?
Yeah, this gets back to things that I do that I may not have done in the past, or may not have done if I weren't also trying to advocate for just the world to be better for my kid. So I talk about it all the time at work. I'm very open. I know that for a lot of people, they can't do that, or they feel that they can't. The environment isn't supportive, or they, with valid reason, have concerns that there would be repercussions. Unfortunately, I was so grateful to see all the work that you all highlighted in the last podcast that with I think AFO doing the trainings for HR. Yeah. It's wonderful. So yeah, for me, one of the biggest, mine are all self-accommodations at this point. Besides the fact that I do have this position that's remote, that was a choice that I made for myself. And then other than that, some of the biggest ones are acceptance. So like, I talk about stemming. I talk about, the different ways that people move their bodies. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to stress about it so much. Sometimes people need to wiggle. And I also talk about just general acceptance is really important. So I do my best to advocate for myself in front of others so that they also know it's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to ask for what you need. So yeah, I really think some of the biggest ones at work are acceptance and openness, trust. Trust is huge. I didn't talk about that as much earlier, but with PDAers, I think with anyone, with humans, but especially with PDAers, trust and authenticity are so important. And so having those things at work are really essential too.
Okay. Yeah. I want to ask a question. So do you also have depression or anything like that?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think with autism, it's like, you got to. But it's interesting to hear you say that working completely remotely is a way that you accommodate yourself, because I work remotely for the most part, unless I need to be out doing like this or at an event or something. So I get it. And I love working remotely because I can control my environment. I like all of the Man, I need to ask my therapist if I have PDA. That's what I'm realizing right now in real time. He's probably going to be like, well, that's your OCD starting to write. I'm like, I can't, but
I know.
I do. I like that I can control my environment. I like that I can just sit down and do my work and just zone in. But I will say that there are times when like periods of time go on where I have no reason to leave my house. And I have no outside, things on my calendar.
I know.
I can feel it also be something that can sort of kick up my depression, because I think a lot of autistic people, we are not antisocial, but we're fine not socializing as much as other people want it to. And so sometimes I find myself being like, okay, it's been like a week. I should probably leave my house.
I know.
Just for my own mental health. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, in my opinion, where like, yes, remote work is great and it's wonderful, especially for people who are neurodivergent. But then also at the same time, it can present like kicking up other things that come along with, autism, like for me, like depression. If I haven't changed my clothes in 3 days, I'm like, well, I know I took a shower, but I put the same outfit back on, so I should probably at least do that, and I'm just curious if you ever feel that way at all.
Yeah, I think it all depends on like, what's your home environment? Who are, do you live with other people is a big one. If you live completely by yourself, or, I think there are lots of different pieces. So to go back to your original question about depression, before my diagnosis, I had multiple diagnoses of major depressive disorder and various different anxieties disorders. I've had a slew added to the list, and even bipolar. While the first two, anxiety and depression, feel accurate, bipolar did not, and it didn't actually match when my therapist and I looked at all of that together. So I think there's always this opportunity for misunderstanding of yourself if you're not getting all the right information.
Yes.
So the depression and anxiety I see as things I'm more prone to for a number of reasons, but they're also both significantly better now than they ever were in the past. And I think for me, that has a lot to do with actually having any understanding about the role of my nervous system in my body, having any understanding about, well, you mean I don't have to pretend like I'm having a good time? I can just leave?
You know what? No, actually, this podcast is about mental health and I'm serious.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about accommodations for a second, I want to, not to interrupt you, but you just triggered me to. One way I have learned, because I'm your age, I'm 36. We're the same age.
Yeah.
One way I have learned that I need to accommodate myself more for my autism and my mental health is to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
I often found myself, for a majority of my life, making myself uncomfortable to an extreme degree in order to not seem socially unacceptable in a social situation. And it took me a really, really long time, I'm talking like up until a couple years ago, to realize that by doing that, I was only doing a disservice to myself. And one way I could accommodate myself and my autism is by just leaving.
Yep.
Just getting. I did it on New Year's Eve. I was somewhere I did not want to be anymore. It was 9 o'clock. It was way too far away from midnight. And so I just left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the ride home, or the drive home, I was like, wow, I'm so cool because I just left and I know everyone's sitting in that room wondering what just happened, but I feel better.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. And I feel like a lot of autistic people do that. We are so afraid of being ostracized. We harm ourselves in tiny little ways that we might not even be aware that we're doing. And sitting in a social situation you don't want to be in is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
It's so very true.
It is. And that really is one of the biggest changes, that then the subsequent effect is if I practice doing that and get better and better at it and start being okay with like just stepping away when I need to, then the effects of depression and anxiety are lessened over time. I mean, that's just one example. But for me, working from home, working remotely allows me to better accommodate my own needs so that, I talked earlier about like being way up here or being down here, which is that depression. Since I work at home and I can make these decisions, I'm much more frequently in this zone. And when I do realize I need to get out, I have places I have a coffee shop that I love, that I feel safe at, and I know people there that know me, know I'm autistic. I feel safe. So if I feel like I need to be in a space with people, I can go do that. And then otherwise, I get to decide about my social interactions. And for me, there are very few large group gatherings that I even go to anymore. If it's somebody really important, their wedding, I'll go to that. I'll go to a funeral.
Yeah.
But I pretty much skip most other things. And instead, in place of those things, I go for really high positive impact social interactions. So one-on-one.
I love a one-on-one.
Love a one-on-one. I'm only managing one person.
I know, yeah. There's just something about a one-on-one that like nothing beats it.
Yeah.
Or maybe a group of three,
yeah.
But a one-on-one I think is an autistic person's dream scenario. So I feel that.
So relatable. So yeah, that's kind of how I've found, and it's a journey, right?
It is,
I'm constantly, we're always evolving and changing and figuring out new things. But the more I've been able to accept myself and even my limitations, like I can say that, like it's not, I have lovely colleagues at work who I love getting to see. And I try to go visit about once a month to Stillwater, and we'll go out to lunch. But when we have like a big holiday gathering with everybody that works there and all of the things, and there's music, last year was the first year I was able to just say, and I think that was maybe the second or third one of these. And I said, my heart is with you, but I am not coming.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. But it's just too much of a drain on my nervous system, and the impacts last so much longer than I think people realize. So yeah, I hope that answers.
It does. Yeah, no, we went a little bit off on a tangent, but that's
it was a good one.
I know. Yeah, that's what this is all about. So okay, getting back on track though. And I think you kind of covered it, talking about your research as it relates to libraries and autism.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can just say a little bit more about that. To say, I'm working right now on this wonderful. I say wonderful because I love working with this group. So we're all neurodivergent. It's an international collaboration. So there are some of us here in the States, a researcher, a librarian in Canada, multiple in the UK. And we get together and we have been working on this really big review of the literature in library and information studies related to autism.
Okay.
So we just want to find out, we have ideas. We think probably there's a lot more in the children's librarianship area, right? We think, we have multiple kind of ideas about what we think we'll find, but we can't know until we pull it all together and analyze it. So we are in the middle of that research project, and the hope is then that we can give a real clear idea of what perceptions of autism are in the field, and then from there make proposals around, here's the kind of research we need and want to see based on what autistic people are telling us, and based on the gaps we're seeing in the literature. So that one's really exciting.
Cool. Yeah. I'm going to have you back for an update on that. No, seriously, I think that's very cool. It's still like such like a what's going on type of thing. It's really crazy.
Yeah. And then I'll just also say,
please,
additionally, that I have, I've done a presentation that we can link as well that's specific to neurodiversity-affirming practices and libraries. So actionable things that libraries can do. And there's also kind of a one-page handout thing too. So that's all thanks to some framing that was done by autistic self-advocate Sunny Jane Wise. So all based on their neurodiversity-affirming practices and kind of moving that into the field of librarianship.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
so that's available too.
Give me all the resources. Yes. I want them. Everyone wants them. So, and that's what the next question is. What are some things that libraries can do better to support autistic people? Because when you think, when I think of library, I kind of automatically think calming place.
Right.
I always feel very calm when I go to the library because you're not supposed to be loud there.
Right.
But I've never thought about what could they do for autistic people. So
yeah, what do you think? Yeah, there are definitely already some great things happening. I know that there is an organization that's worked on like sensory kits for libraries to have. But I think a lot of it is just education and awareness still. you're right that we think of libraries as these quiet spaces. And for a lot of autistic people who have sound sensitivity, that's like, thank you. But also we have autistic individuals who vocalize a lot, right? And so how do we manage ensuring that everyone is welcome and that there's space for everyone to be able to manage those differing sensory needs? So yeah, I would point people first to some of that handout that I put together based on Sunny Jane Wise's principles, and that presentation as well, just as kind of jumping off points, because it's huge, all the things that you could do. And I generally recommend, once you've heard a few things, pick one thing at your library that you think is a manageable step forward. Maybe it's just like some kind of an awareness. If you have an autistic individual who is open, don't do this if this is someone who's not talking about that, or someone you just assume is autistic. But having like a stemming awareness, just like some way of talking about these differences that aren't actually that different. Like lots of people bounce their legs.
I feel like that's a good way for neurotypical people to wrap their head around it.
Yeah.
I think everyone stems.
Yeah, I do too.
Because we're all made of energy and it's got to get out somehow. But you're right.
Yes.
A lot of people shake their leg uncontrollably or do that thing with their lips or and I've seen so many people's like the lights click on in their brain when you give them those examples. They're like, oh, okay. So I think you're absolutely right, those conversations.
Yeah, just conversations around awareness and acceptance, and just learning. One of the biggest things I think people can do is just be open to learning from autistic individuals.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about or you think that is important to take a minute to discuss? Because this is your time, and so,
I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm grateful for everything that you and AFO are doing.
Oh, thank you.
Really, really, because one thing that I think we see a lot and nobody seems to talk about it directly in more formal spaces, is that there is this sense of a division between autistic individuals and caregivers. Not always, but we do sometimes see this, right?
Yeah, no.
And if you're on social media,
the iceberg
you definitely
of autism politics is deep.
Autism politics.
It's very deep.
Yes, right. I think that I'm really fortunate to inhabit both of those spaces, right? That I am both autistic myself and I'm the caregiver. So there's a lot of not helpful stuff happening, basically. I think as much harm has been caused by misunderstanding and miscommunication, etc. I think we all have a responsibility to acknowledge that anyone in this space has good intentions.
Yeah.
That's the piece that's getting lost so often. That doesn't mean that it's okay for certain practices that we know are not helpful to still be practiced in the same ways. But we're not having social media, I think, has made it a lot worse too.
Yes.
We're not having conversations.
Yes.
We're just sort of yelling at each other.
Yes.
I'm not on any social media anymore because that was another accommodation for myself. It's like, this is
Good
just
for
not,
you.
I know.
Good for you.
This is not healthy for me. I don't know how to
The happiest
do it in
I've
a
ever
healthy
been
way.
in my life.
Yeah.
is when I didn't have it.
Yeah. So I just think if we could slow down a little bit and try to listen to each other and hear intention, like listen and hear that people are in these spaces because they care. That's the starting point for a conversation, as opposed to where things are starting often as already a fight. And that's not to invalidate anyone's experience or, horrible things that have happened when there has been quote unquote care that was really harmful or traumatic. one example just quickly would be like exposure therapy, right? What's fascinating in my own experience and what I've seen from other autistic individuals is exposure therapy, stay with me here, exposure therapy can be helpful if you choose you want to do it.
Yeah. No, let her cook. That's what they say on social media now. Let her cook. Yeah, no, please keep, I agree with you.
But when we remove the autonomy piece, when we take away someone's opportunity to clearly say no, and that doesn't mean it has to be words. That could be a non-speaking individual very clearly saying no with their body, with their actions. If we can respect that, help them get to a place of neurological safety, and then at a certain point, revisit, there's a lot of harm that has been caused by not recognizing and acknowledging the personhood and autonomy of autistic individuals. But that doesn't mean that the people who were involved in that didn't care. And that's the piece that nobody wants to say, but it's true. Yeah. And so we have to find ways to, I really believe that it will be of benefit to everyone if we can all have compassion for one another and acknowledge that our intentions are good. Then we can start to find pathways together where we can hear each other, because nobody wants to be yelled at and told they're a terrible person.
No.
Nobody, rarely, you have to be like a monk to respond well to that.
Yeah. No, you're right, though. And that's a huge discourse within the autism community, which is another thing that I see people's brains sort of explode when they aren't in it. And then you start to explain the intricate ways in which the politics of autism work. They really are deep. Yeah. And there's a huge rift between adult autistic people and caregivers. And it really is, well, should caregivers even be able to voice their opinion?
Right.
And I think it's, my opinion, I agree with everything you're saying, because, I look back at my own experience. I was very bullied as a child, and when I couldn't advocate for myself, it was my parents advocating for me. I didn't know how to advocate for myself, so they did it because they could. I don't look at that as them speaking for me. It's them speaking because I'm their child.
Yeah.
And for nonverbal or, people with profound autism, they can't verbally speak their needs, but their parents know what they are and want to speak for them to help them. Right. And so I agree with what you're saying. I think everyone's coming at it from an angle of, I really give a big crap.
Yeah.
And I want it to be better.
Yeah.
But we get lost in these side pocket things that just cause all of these issues. And it's really nice. You're coming at it from a three-way angle: adult diagnosed, parent of someone with autism, and a caregiver. So I really love hearing you say that, because you're kind of hitting it from every angle.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Oh my gosh, no, I've had a lovely conversation. It's been so wonderful to meet you and hear everything you have to say. I greatly appreciate it. Definitely want you back for another episode to talk more about your research, because really fascinating stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carly.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Everything we talked about is going to be linked in the description for you, because we also want to be your community. And if you're an adult living in the Tulsa or Oklahoma City metro areas looking for community, please go to autismfoundationok.org/events to see when our next social is. We host monthly socials for autistic and neurodivergent adults to get together in community, unmask, and just be who we are. And we do a lot of really amazing things, and I would love to meet you. Also, if you're living in Oklahoma and you want to support the autistic community and or the work that we do at the Autism Foundation of Oklahoma, please go to our donate page on our website and choose either donate now or endowment. We have an endowment through the Kirkpatrick Family Foundation that can really just take your dollar and help us create a sustainable future where we are never not serving Oklahomans with autism. And that's all I've got for you, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.